Well, hello. I know it's been a super long time. All right, so let me get my apologies in order here. It's just been too long. And I can see you all looking like, where is the next pep talk? Where is this lady? What is going on with her? I'm fine. I've been thinking about a lot of things that I want to start to do. I've got some branding things going on that you'll be seeing pretty soon up on the website and all of those good things, which is www.faithworksempowered.com. Faithworksempowered.com. All right, let's talk about this. Did you see the subject? The day the patient told me to get out. And I don't curse. Thank goodness I was baptized and God took that away from me. I used to curse like a sailor. But she did. It was my first day of doing my chaplain clinicals. And let's talk about that. Okay. So I worked with the pastoral care department, and one day the director, he was also a supervisor. He taught people to be chaplains. We had to do clinicals of at least 400 hours of patient visitation and charting. And so one day he says to me, I was actually assistant and associate pastor there, not pastor. We call the hospital actually a church. Those were our parishioners and what have you anyway, because we got to talk to them and listen to them, active listening and all that good stuff. And so one day he says to me, sit down, I want to talk to you. And I said, okay. He says, I want to train you to be a chaplain. I want you to join the next class. And I thought that was great because I like to encourage people. I thought that was what it was all about. And so I was like, yeah, oh, okay. And he says, you have the heart of a chaplain. He said there are people who go to seminary to try to learn to access what you have. You have a heart for people, a heart for chaplaincy. And so I said, okay, sounds great. And then he says, okay, so the first thing you're going to have to do is go down to the morgue. And, some of us, like, we have bosses who like to joke around a little bit. And I certainly thought that was like, oh, he must be joking. He's playing around again. But he wasn't. Very serious. Oh, and remember, this podcast is not the perfect podcast. You're going to hear real life happening. If I was outside in the park, you'd probably hear a bird and a baby crying and, I don't know, baby laughing, whatever. So just want to get the message to you. So he says that to me. He wasn't kidding. And then he says, you're going to go upstairs and I want you to go into one of the isolation rooms, right? And I'm like, man, like, he's kind of pouring it on here. First the morgue, and now he wants me to go up to the isolation room to go see someone. And oh my gosh, but I did it. So I go upstairs. I'll never forget it. When you go to the isolation rooms, you have to, basically put your mask on. We see a lot of people walking around today with their masks on and everything like that. And some people, I'm kidding you not, I know they feel like they are isolating in a quarantine room at home. Think about how difficult that must be for not just a patient, but even a lot of our seniors who are at home, and they're saying if you go outside, there's a strong possibility that you may become ill. And so they've been inside, some of them for months, ordering food, waiting for people to deliver food to them. Check in on a senior. How about that? Check in on a friend. Check in on somebody. Because we were made to be in community. We were not made to live life alone. And so much has changed. And I know that's why a lot of people, the minute that they started to raise the ban off, like, hey, you all can go out, they're like, hey, snatch these masks off. Let's go and enjoy ourselves and what have you. Because people were meant to live life in community. And so I go up to this room and, I put on what I need to put on. They give me the little what do you call those things anyway? The little foot covers, and I had to cover my clothes up and all of this stuff, put my hair. I was like, well, my gosh, what in the world? And I go inside the room, and there is this woman. She was a senior. I remember her very, very much. She had lost a lot of her hair. Yeah, she had strands of hair on top of her head, and she was laying there kind of facing the window. So picture me coming in. There's just like a small little area, like a little hallway area, and you come in, and there is the open space of the room, and she's laying in her bed in a room all by herself, and she's basically, facing the window. She didn't really turn to see who I was. I don't think she cared at that moment. I came to discover that it was more about the struggle, about the fact that this woman had become more than a patient. She had become more than a woman, more than a mom, more than a grandmother. At this point, she was identified more so by her illness than even her name. She was identified by the number that was on her chart. Oh, this is patient number. And this is her illness. And this is her blood type. But how many times did I see a doctor walk into a room and sometimes say, hey, how are you, Miss So-and-so? It was more so, sometimes I would see a group of doctors come in, and I don't know. It wasn't that she was an experiment or anything like that. She was a human being. And this woman had had enough. And so here I come. She doesn't know who I am. I look like just about everyone else at the hospital who was coming in to see her. And she was not welcoming at all. Matter of fact, she said, get the blankety blank out of my room. And I looked at her and I kind of said, hello, I'm Chaplain, told her my name. She still didn't really turn. And this was around in December, and so they were having a male choir that would come to sing to the patients around this time, and I went to invite her to, this, or to say that they would be coming around, and would it be okay if they came? And she said no, just like that. And so I said, okay. I mean, and if you know anything about me, I am, I'm going to try to push through that. Like, can I stay? Like, what is going on here? And so she didn't look, and she finally says, get out. And I took a couple of steps back, because if I remember, I feel like they had put the dinner there or something, and I didn't want mashed potatoes and peas and carrots to be thrown at me after being told to get out and not leaving. And so I took a couple of steps back, but I didn't leave. And I stood there and I looked. It was like, is this what being a chaplain is all about? This is my first day. Like, oh my gosh, right? And so I stood there and I saw her tilt her head slightly. Can you picture her facing the window, and then all of a sudden kind of looking up at the ceiling and not moving her head to look at me, but taking her eyes and moving her eyes and looking at me out of the corner of her eyes to see if I had left yet. I hadn't. And so I said to her, okay, I'll come back and check on you tomorrow. She says, I bet you will. Just like that. And I said, okay, all right, I'll see you tomorrow. And I left. Now, I had a choice. The choice was, do I go back to see this lady? She doesn't want me there in the first place. Or go back. I decided the next day, in spite of the fact that she really was pretty upset, pretty disgruntled, And she didn't have a problem with showing me how much she did not want to be bothered. But I made the decision to go back just because I know that sometimes when people are upset, we're not seeing what's going on beneath the anger. We're not seeing what's going on beneath their struggle. We're just seeing the wall that they're putting up because they're just sick and tired of being sick and tired. And as a patient, I'm sure, all day long, she was being poked on, prodded, people coming in without warning. And the other thing I wanted to say too that I thought about was, okay, this is a senior, right? And most of the time, because there were plenty of patients who I saw who were pastors, who were people in leadership positions, and sometimes they would say, I don't want, no, don't tell my parishioners, don't tell the people to come to see me. And that saddened me in a way, but it also left me wondering why. And I started to think about that, because sometimes for leaders are in these positions where they usually are held in this high regard, high standard. You have to look like everything is going well. You don't get to cry, is what people think. You don't get to show your humanity or your vulnerability, is what many people think when it comes to leaders. And so they didn't want people to come to see them. They didn't want to have to put on the facade and try to feel like they had to be brave when they really wanted to be weak. So I got it. With this woman, I got it. I went back the next day, and the nurse was in the room with her. And I thought, okay, I'm going in for my second round of punishment from this lady. Let me go and get it, because I'm not going to give up on her. And I went in, and just as I suspected, once again, she said, leave. And I stood there again, just like I did the day before. Almost seemed like my feet were cemented to that floor. And even if I wanted to move, I just couldn't. Something would not allow me to leave that room. Looking back in retrospect, I could say perhaps it was God. Because who puts up with more, what do I want to say? Like of people saying, get out, leave me alone. I don't want to be bothered with you. Than God does. But yet and still, he's patient, he's kind, he's long-suffering. And so, as that chaplain, as that born-again believer, as that person who identifies as a Christian, should I not show the love, the compassion, the tenacity, the strength, the integrity of God with this stranger, this woman, this patient who found herself in a difficult place, plagued by an affliction, an illness that she wanted to leave but couldn't make go away. And so there I am. I heard leave again. At least she didn't say get out. And I stood there. And I started to get ready to turn to go. And she said, not you, her. She was talking to the nurse this time and not me. She said, yeah, you go. You've been picking on me, taking my blood, sticking me with these needles. You get out the room, she said to her. And a smile came on my face. And as I walked over to her to go talk to her, we exchanged names. And it was very interesting because as a chaplain, I think there are different types of chaplains, some with the badge and different things. But when you do your clinicals, it's actually part of the requirement from joint commissions to have patients visited by chaplains, because it's part of taking care of the whole man, the total being. People do need God in the midst of their suffering. Not just medicine, not just anything, but they also need to know that God hasn't forgotten about them. And so we talked. And I went back again and again and again. And it was interesting, I didn't share with her at the beginning the fact that I loved God, that I wanted her to know him, that he helped me through some of the most difficult times of my life, through the brokenness, through my own bouts with illness, right? Having arthritis at a point in my life and having to say, God, I have to trust you. This hurts. And knowing that he does and he can take the pain away. And so we talked about her fish, or actually it was my fish now that I think about it. Stanley. I had a fish named Stanley. And she told me about her children. And one Friday I went to go visit her and she says, where are you going? And I said, I'm going to all-night prayer. I'm going to pray all night and I would like to pray for you. And she said, would you please pray for me? Would you please? And it was interesting because I want to say this. It wasn't that I was constantly saying, let me, this. I want you gotta know Jesus. Come on, you gotta get saved. Look at you, you're sick. I don't know how long. It wasn't that. It was the fact that this woman realized that I cared. I showed her God. I showed her the love of God with my life more than with my words. What about you, dear friend? Have people shown you, and remember, this is a live broadcast, you're going to hear live sounds. Hey, little girl. So I showed her more than told her about God's love. And so I continued to go visit. And once again, we arrived at that day. It was a Friday night. I'll never forget it. And I was getting ready to leave. And I simply said to her, I'll be back. I'll pray for you. Absolutely. Absolutely, I will. And when I went back to see her again, it wasn't much longer after that she was gone, but we, in that short period of time, had become friends. And I became the person who she could talk to, who she could confide in, who she could speak to about how she felt. And she even shared some of her past with me. And I enjoyed those conversations. And once again, it wasn't that I was proselytizing or anything. I just felt, listen to her. Sit and listen. Sometimes people who are broken, people who are wounded, people who are going through illness, affliction, people who have suffered through divorce or who have lost loved ones, or children who have passed before parents, and children who have lost parents, right? And people who are going through, even right now with this pandemic, and feeling quite distraught because they just don't understand what is going on. People who are facing divorce and going through breakups and finding themselves believing that they had friends who would be there for the rest of their lives, and finding out that people are walking out on them and not being kind in this season, in this time where we need love, where we need kindness, where people need to embrace and feel real love, but are being told, stay back, don't touch. There's healing sometimes in the embrace, in the love. People who oftentimes have even been ill, Sometimes it's been because they've had lots of people around them to, encourage them and to cheer them on. But now there are people who are going through these illnesses in rooms all by themselves with no one to talk to. But I pray that they realize that even though a physical person is not in that room, that you can always talk to God. You can always talk to Him. And so I want you to take a moment to think, and I don't know what side you're on. I don't know if you're the person who is in that state that they wish someone would listen, or if you're the person who needs to listen. It's all important, every single bit of it. It's all important because we actually realize that it's not always what the person is showing on the surface. I mean, think about your life. I can certainly think about mine and the days where I felt like I just didn't believe that people really cared. And because of it, and because of my experiences, there was certainly a part of me that wanted to say, I'm going to shut down and shut out and keep out for just the fear of being hurt again. I think that's why in the Bible it says that perfect love casteth out all fear. Yes, I will admit that sometimes in wanting to be loved, there's a bit of vulnerability that you go through. Do I do this? Do I share my feelings? Do I share my emotions again? I remember what happened last time. I remember how I shared with them, and not only did they take what I shared, but they twisted it. They turned it around and made it look like something that wasn't even true, and only I knew it because the way they said it, it was fabricated so well. It looked like it was true, and they plotted and they schemed and they hurt you. But just because someone hurt you and someone walked out on you doesn't mean that everyone is the same. There's a scripture that I love. It says that He places the lonely in families. The other day, I had such a wonderful moment. There are times when you'll pray to God and, sometimes you'll get down on your knees or you'll stand up or you'll sit or whatever it is, and you'll just tell Him all about it. You'll tell Him about how you want the world to be in a better place, and you cry out for mercy for the nation, for the earth, for people that are wounded, that are hurting, that are discouraged, that are hurting others. You cry out for it all. And then there are moments when you will go before God and you will realize that He says, you can come to me as a child. He says, actually, that's the best way for you to come. And I know, we're adults. I'm an adult. What is He? I go to God as a child. But He says, those that come to me as children, those are the ones that will inherit the kingdom of God. Because they'll realize that their dependence is solely upon Him. Even though we work, we do things and all of, but He says, come to me as a little child, so that you don't always have to feel like you have to be strong, like you have to have all the answers, like you have to be the strong one in your family. You can go to God. It reminds me of when I would get finished for the day after seeing patients, after chasing patients, after we were in the morgue and, I had to pull the drawer out. It was already pulled out before they came down out of courtesy. I just couldn't see myself pulling the drawer out in front of a person and then saying, is this your loved one or what have you? So me and one of the head nurses, would pull the drawer out of this person who had transitioned, and we would take a sheet and shroud it around their face to kind of take away the harsh blow that a person would feel. And we would, I didn't do it, but the head nurse would wipe away the excretions so it wouldn't be so difficult. And I would bring the person into the room and stand there with them and catch them when they got ready to fall or chase them when they ran because the emotions were so overwhelming. Sometimes people just want you to be present. We learned something very valuable called the ministry of presence. Sometimes there's nothing you can say when a person is so broken and so wounded. They just want to know that someone is there with them in the midst of their suffering. And I was honored to be able to do that. Not just then, but even now. When people call or text me and say, I just need a one-on-one. These are not my clients that I coach. These are just friends or people that I know, or someone will say, hey, can you speak to so-and-so for me? And I'm happy to do so. Because sometimes people just need to know that someone really cares and that you're not going to leave me like everyone else did. Will you stand with me in the midst of my suffering? Reminds me of the story of Jesus when he was in Gethsemane, I believe it was, and he went to pray. And he took some people with him, the disciples, and he took a few even more closer with him and was like, you come closer. I'm about to go through something. He didn't tell him what. He knew it. He knew what he was about to go through. Come pray with me. Stay, pray with me. And they fell asleep. And sometimes you fall asleep because the pain of what you know your friend, your loved one is going through is so intense. Your body is like, I need to go to sleep. I need a moment to deal with this. And they fell asleep and he still had to go through it regardless. And there are some things that you still end up having to go through regardless in this very imperfect world, and the choices that mankind makes to regretfully snub their noses up at God and say he doesn't exist. And say all kinds of things about him, that it's him who's creating these vast storms when it's really the enemy. When it's really the bully who's there and saying in your ear, oh, it's God who did it. Hate God. But it's not the case. We need God. And so that's what happened with this patient. I'm so glad that I didn't leave, that I pushed past my own feelings of rejection. She rejected me. Get out my room with a curse word. But I pushed past it, and I thank God, because it wasn't my strength, right? It was the grace of God to stay there and to listen and to let her know. Not only did I care, but more so that God cared, and that he saw her in the midst of her suffering, just like he sees you, and just like he sees me. He hasn't forgotten, dear one. God never forgets. Once again, I will say we live in this very imperfect world where all kinds of things are happening, and there's hate and all kinds of hard things to look at. Sometimes you just have to turn the television off or go off of that page on social media. You've got to turn your phone off sometimes. Or you've got to find the right one to listen to. That's why I appreciate this podcast, this space that I get to share with you. No, it's not perfect. But I love to use the term that I have in my book, Don't Give Up. It says, imperfectly perfected. That is what we are. Perfected when the Lord looks at us through the sacrifice that he gave, saying, I shed my blood, I died for you, and I rose again, so that in all of the areas where you're weak and imperfect and broken, and in all of the areas where you miss it and you don't get it right, I've already made the perfect sacrifice for you. And that's exciting and it's comforting all at the same time. And so, with all of this in mind, as I walk around a little bit, as I get ready to close this episode, I know you noticed, right? It's usually pep talk with Yadida. But I put up Don't Give Up today as the artwork for this particular broadcast, podcast. Because in all things, the one message that I am here to give you is don't give up. The one thing that matters the most to me, why I come on, why I go on my social media platforms, and if you have sent me a friend request, go on the other platform. We have the personal one. I have a Don't Give Up campaign page also, but there are going to be some branding changes, and so don't worry if I haven't accepted. I have many that are on that personal page. I just want to keep it open, the open page, to be able to encourage you from, because I want to be consistent, and I want that message to be streamlined to you when you go on, that's what you see, that you are not alone, that you must not give up, that you must keep going, regardless of what you are faced with today. Even in my book, Don't Give Up, there's another chapter that says between here and there. And I wrote that one because I realized that sometimes it's between here and there where the storm, the struggle seems the most difficult. That's where sometimes you're like, I've had it, I'm ready to give up. You start off at one space, and as you're going through, sometimes it just seems like your challenges are unsurmountable. The 1 minute you come out of one thing, there's another. You come out of one. That's for some people. This is true. It's not for everyone. But I always like to look at it like this. Every experience that I have encountered, every loss, every moment of grief, every moment of financial deficit, every moment of heartache, every moment of friends turning away, every moment of being discouraged, every moment of tears, weeping, crying before God, as I cry for others, as I feel the pain of the broken and the wounded, I realize that none of it is for naught. That everything that I have encountered is another moment, another opportunity for me to feel, to be empathetic, to be sympathetic, for me to be able to even talk to you, not from a place of judgment, not from a place of name calling or picking at you for the times that you have failed, because I have failed, for the times that you have faltered, because I have faltered, for the days that you have made mistakes, because I've made them too. And so I don't get to point a finger. I don't get to talk down to anyone. Because when I look at the grace and the mercy of God, I realize that if He could be merciful and love me in spite of me who didn't even want to know God, me who thought it was all about myself at a point of my life, but yet He still waited patiently, mercifully. He still waited. And so He waits for us. He walks with us. He talks with us. He picks us up when we're down. Hallelujah to God. Glory to His magnificent name. He shields us. And even when you go through pain, it's like I think of a woman who's going through domestic violence. I think there comes a time when even God Himself says enough is enough for you. Or maybe you're a man who's suffering through that. I think there comes a time when He says enough is enough. And you have to make the decision sometimes to walk for your life, for your children. And that's a hard decision to make when you look and you say, well, He didn't want me to work. He told me not to work. This is where my livelihood comes from. But what good is livelihood if your life is jacked up and you're not really living? You will heal. But it's hard to heal when you're consistently being wounded. That's like a scab. A scab starts to go over the wound so that the healing can begin. But what if a person keeps picking a scab off constantly? It becomes infected sometimes, and it affects your entire body when all we had to do was let it heal. So let the healing begin in your life. And I say to you, just like that woman, that patient, sometimes you will have to let people into your brokenness, into your pain. I get it. There are some who ridicule you because of what you've gone through or because of what you've done. They will ridicule you and make you feel worse. Then those are not the people who are for you to help you. You have to change sometimes the people that are around you. You're going to have to flee, run sometimes. I've had to leave sometimes. I've had to pack up things and go so I can speak from experience to you. Those are some of the hardest decisions you have to make, but some of the best decisions. And you might not see it or feel it now, but one day you will. Do what you have to do for yourself, for your children. Do what you have to do for your family to live. And as you do it, and as you go, and as you, whatever you have to do, as you allow people to come in who you pushed away, who are good people for you, not toxic. And even the toxic ones you need to pray for, because normally they are that way because they have not allowed themselves to be healed. They have not allowed God to heal them. And so the only way that they know how to do it is to sometimes make you feel bad, to hurt you, because they are not healed. And the blood that's running through their body is infected. It's not good. And I mean, spiritually, it's infected. It's infected with their own pain, their own guilt, their own toxins. But God never meant for you to take that on. He did mean for you to give that to Him. Give that person to Him that hurt you. Give that person to Him that wounded you. You've got to start to focus on you. My mom told me one day years ago, she saw that I was in a relationship where the person was being very unkind at times. And she said to me, she said, "You are not Florence Nightingale." And I said, "Who?" In other words, you can look her up. She was saying, "You are not the nurse who was sent here to heal people who are wounding and breaking you." And sometimes God will use you, is what I want to say. But try not to consistently put yourself in compromising situations where you feel like you can barely make it because you're always trying to help someone else. That is not what He planned. That is not what He ordained for your life. You have to take intentional moments to allow the right people to come in, because community is important. And I don't care if it's through a Zoom call, if it's through a chat, if it's through something. You sometimes have to open up and start to share how you really feel. Some of you, life has made you feel because maybe you were the big sister, the big brother, or the middle, or whatever it was, or maybe you are that pastor or that leader, or maybe you're the mom or the dad, and you've been led to feel like you've got to be strong always. But this is not true. Your strength, or the best time to be strong, is when your strength comes from God. But this is what even God says. He says that it is in your weakness that my strength will be made perfect. Not in your strength will be made perfect. He said it's in your weakness that His strength becomes perfect in you, because you finally realize that you are not the answer, the end all, the be all. You don't have to be. You can be human. You can acknowledge that your suffering hurts at times, that it's painful at times. And you get to sometimes even tell people, and hear me out, there are some people who are going to take, or who have already taken, what you have wanted them to listen to, and they've taken your story, and they've shared it amongst people that you never intended for them to share it with. And that hurts, right? But I don't want you to worry about that. As my daughter takes the potato chip bag and, folds it up. Listen, that was them. And I know that hurt. But that doesn't mean that you have to push everyone out. That person didn't know how to handle what you're going through because they are not healed themselves. Anytime someone can take your calamity, your confusion, your pain, and throw it out there and try to humiliate you even further when you're already down and try to step on you, that person has a problem where they need to be delivered. They need to go to therapy. They need to humble themselves in the presence of God and get delivered and get healed. But they don't see it sometimes. They thrive, and that's the enemy that will cause a person to thrive off of lying on you and saying things that they shouldn't say. It happens to many of us. It happens to me. That's why I can tell you I know it hurts, but please don't shut everyone out. Don't do it. Find a therapist. Find a Christian counselor. And if it doesn't feel right, then find someone else. But never stop trying. Because sometimes your healing is going to come through community. You did not get into that situation by yourself. You did not suffer through those things, that molestation, that rape, that abuse, whatever it is. You didn't go through that being bullied all by yourself. So oftentimes your healing is not going to come by yourself. God will use people. And you might have to wait until you find them. But I urge you, just keep saying that, Lord. You place the lonely in families. Lord, you place the lonely in families. Keep saying it. Keep believing it. Have expectancy. Depression and discouragement will try to take the expectancy away from your life that makes you think it's going to get better. It will try to put a dark shell, a dark veil in front of your face of darkness and just say, oh, well, this is it. It's not ever going to get better. You are going to have to find intentional ways to break out of that darkness. And I don't care if it means opening up the blinds, taking the covers off, jumping up and putting on, I put on this, This Is Me. I love that song, right? And sometimes I just dance. It's from The Greatest Showman. This is me. And other times I just put on worship music to the Lord. And the other day, for some reason, I had a dream and I was singing, what's that song? I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor. Y'all know I love to sing, right? And I was singing this song. And sometimes you're just going to have to sing anyway, my friend. You're going to have to jump up and say, I'm just going to move, even if you do the 1-2 step like the little kids, and just put on an encouraging song. An encouraging song. Something that makes you happy. Not sexual, not perverted, not lustful, but a song that makes you happy. Not a song with a bunch of cursing in it and I'm going to knock your mama out. None of that stuff. Come on, y'all. Not the angry music. Not the angry music. Something peaceful, something beautiful. The Word of God says that. Think on the things that are beautiful, true, honest, lovely, kind. If there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on those things. Start to change your mindset. Get out of your own head. Get out of your own thoughts. And turn your gaze and your focus on God, the great and omnipotent, awesome one who walks with us through. He did not say we would not go through things. I would not stand here and lie to you and tell you that. What he did say is, I will walk with you through it. Through the valley of the shadow of death, through the waters, through the rivers, through the sorrows, through the hurt, through the pain, through the anguish, through the disappointment, through the defeat, through the lies, through the deception. He says, I will walk with you. I will be with you through it all. Glory to his name. That's the only way I've made it this far. That's the reason why I coach. That's the reason why I speak. That's the reason why I go on social media. It's not for the likes. It's for the wounded. It's not for the likes. It's for the rejected. It's for the hurting. It's for the lost. It's for those who feel empty and left out. That's the reason why I'm here now. To let you know, open up the blinds and you can live again. You can breathe again and you can hope again. And I know that I've heard people chanting, I can't breathe, and the things that are happening in the world. It's so sad that people are taking their last breath as they're saying, I can't breathe. But for you, you've got to breathe. You've got to live. You've got to breathe in. You've got to inhale. You've got to exhale because you're still here. Because you're still here. And you were made to live life on purpose. You're made to live life on purpose. So live. So breathe. So make a choice today. Wherever you are, maybe you're like, I'm okay, I'm good, but it can always get better. Relationship with God can always increase. The time that we spend saying, Daddy, I love you. Daddy, I need you. Daddy, I can't make it without you. And yes, I call God Daddy. He said I could say our Father. So yes, what do you call God? What do you need to call him now where you are? What do you need to say to him? Say it. And I know some people are feeling like, yeah, I want to curse. Well, don't curse at God. Nah, don't do that. Tell him about it. Take those emotions and tell him the truth of what you're feeling. It's the hurt that's making you angry. It's what you're seeing that's making you bitter for some of you. And so share it. You know how it is with a baby, like the first time, they're in the room, mom's walked out or dad and left them in the crib and they're sleeping. And when they first wake up, they just turn a little bit, they start to stir and they're like, doing like that, That's like, I'm up, I'm awake, come. And then, the parent doesn't hear them, so they start to stir a little more, right? You know what I'm talking about, some of you. They still don't hear. And then that turns into, and they're whining a little bit. Parent still doesn't come. And then it comes up, and then, right? It goes through different levels. And for some, that's what it feels like. I feel like no one's hearing me. And you're showing a little bit of attitude, right? Man, I don't know. I don't feel like being bothered, right? Or you're shutting down. Your cry is coming out in your actions. And you're trying because you want someone to really hear you. But people are busy doing their own thing and going through their own struggles. And it's making you angry that no one can see and that people don't discern your brokenness. Sometimes we're crying out to the wrong people. Sometimes those people can't help us unless God allows them to. Or sometimes you need to just keep reaching out and never giving up. Find the right person. Keep looking. Keep hoping. Don't give up. And then there are times when you've got to let that cry out because it's been in your body. You've seen too much. You know too much. You've hurt too much. And you've got to cry it out. Go ahead and do it. Just get it out. And yes, sometimes you will cry out to people because you need to have the fellowship of knowing that someone cares. And then other times you're going to cry straight out to God. You're going to go past that little whimper to really telling him how I feel. God, this hurts. God, when is this going to stop? God, please fix this. Have mercy upon us. God, forgive me. I've messed up. I've thought the wrong things, said the wrong things. And it should start there. Forgive me. And then keep it going to communicate with him. Like that woman who told me to get out. And how that changed because I went back. Go back to God. First there's anger sometimes. You took my loved one. How could you? I thought you wouldn't do that. How could you, God? And then get past that. Don't stay there. Keep it going. I'm angry because it hurts. I think about God and how he sent his only begotten son into a world that didn't even love him. Everyone didn't. Some spat on him. Some wanted to see his demise. They crucified him. They wanted to see him hurting. And how the Father watched this, his only begotten son. how he watched him suffer. So he gets it. So that's what I'm saying to you today. God gets it. Keep on talking, keep on walking, keep on living, keep on breathing, keep on crying out. Did I say breathing? Breathing. Keep on crying out. Don't give up. Don't give up. Stand up. Speak up. Speak out. Get out of that situation if you need to. And live. You can pray for someone from afar. And God is the one that leads to help them anyway. You've got to live. You've got to live. And there are plenty of places out here for men who are beating up women to get help. There's a company that's called Connect. I'm trying to think because there's more than one Connect, but I know it's based out of New York City. If you put in Connect Domestic Violence and reach out to them, talk to them. There's another company called The Father Factory for men who have suffered sexual abuse and trauma as children. Reach out to Hassan Daniel. Reach out to these people. Don't go through this stuff by yourself. If you need deliverance, reach out. We all do. Sometimes what you think you're feeling, you think it's one thing, but you really need to be delivered from some of the stuff that you've gone through as a child. And you never got to deal with it. You never spoke about it. You never told. It's time to come out of that. It's time to talk about it. It's time to live and to break through and to rise up from the brokenness. All right. Well, this is me. And I've enjoyed this time that we've shared today. My message is don't give up. Learn how to live and to celebrate your now on the way to your next and be grateful. And learn how to use your story to encourage others to live, to push past, to not give up, to realize they are important. Use your story like I use mine. I have some new things I have on the horizon that I'll be sharing with you. Some new brand things. So look at the site, Faith Works Empowered. Just don't give up. Don't do it. If you're in the sound of my voice and you thought about committing suicide, don't do it. Live. Someone cares. You are important. Talk to God about it and share. Share how you feel. Don't shut in. Don't close out. You are important to God. You can reach out to me. I am on a couple of platforms, but they're going to be changing. And so the website is probably the best way. You can email me at hello@faithworksempowered.com. hello@faithworksempowered.com. I want to hear from you. If this podcast touched your heart, if it encouraged you in any way, feel free to share how you feel. I have to find a way to put the comments on the podcast. I don't know. I haven't done it on that page yet, but share how you feel. Be kind. Because if you're mean, I'm going to ignore you, but pray for you. All right. And that's about it. I'll have some things coming up. Yes, I do coach. I enjoy it. It makes me smile when I see my clients just moving forward. I have a client who I'm working with, and oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Sometimes you just need accountability. You need to put some things in place. You've got to trust God first, right? The spirituality piece always has to come first. You've got to start to operate from a place of faith. Do not fake it till you make it. You've got to faith that you've got to trust God that He will walk you through, that He will give you the ideas, the strategies, the ingenuity, and He will use people. And so, yes, I love that. And so I'm We do Pursue 101. That's another group. So I'll have some more things. It's coming out for you, and I will be uploading it to bless you, to help you to move forward. All right. Well, that's it. I'm getting ready to go now. All right. I've enjoyed my time with you. Share this with someone. Share it and encourage someone. Allow it to be a blessing. And most of all, whatever you do, keep on going. Live by faith. Trust God. And don't give